Boys, UFC 303, Pereira versus Procházka, number 2. Fight week is here. We are literally only a few days away from getting the rematch. And even though we've had a bunch of canceled fights, this card has been shuffled around so much. This is possibly like top 3 best UFC pay-per-views this year so far. That being said, we're going to quickly run through every single fight on this card, give you guys my rare predictions on who I think is going to win and how. And yeah, like I said, I think this fight card has gotten better since the cancellation of McGregor versus Chandler, but that's just my opinion. You guys have to let me know in the comments below, are you more excited for this pay-per-view than what we had previously? But starting it off in the early prelims bantamweight division, we have Ricky Simón taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Now, Ricky Simón, 31 years old. He's currently in his prime right now, but he's coming off a 2-fight losing streak to Mario Bautista and Song Yadong. Oliveira, on the other hand, he has a small height and reach advantage. Currently 3-fight winning streak, all 3 by KO. 80% of his wins come from KO, 10% from sub, only 10% go to the decision. Ricky Simón, on the other hand, 50% of his wins come from decision, 30% from KO, 20% come from submission. Both of these guys, in my opinion, are overhyped right now. Oliveira having that crazy flying knee KO on his record, definitely one of the highlights of this year. But this is a big step up for him. Ricky Simón, kind of a vet in this game. He has some crazy explosive double legs. He has some pretty basic fundamentals when it comes to striking. Oliveira, on the other hand, definitely more of a striker than he is like a grappler or any of that stuff. He has some pretty good KO power. Ricky Simón, you know, if he wasn't on this 2-fight losing streak, I would probably pick him to win a decision win. However, I don't know where his mind is right now. He is coming off that 2-fight losing streak. Oliveira, on the other hand, it seems like they're pushing this guy, trying to give him a favorable matchup to get higher in the rankings. He has good knockout power. I could definitely see Oliveira catching Ricky Simón and KOing him, but I could also see Ricky Simón using his wrestling to get a decision win. But officially, I think I'm going to go KO win round. Let's do a late round 2 KO for Oliveira. Let's keep moving down to the flyweight division. Ray Tsuruya taking on Carlos Hernandez. Now, Ray 9-0, 22 years old. He's a pretty big prospect right now. Carlos Hernandez, on the other hand, 9-3. Both these guys have pretty good records. His last fight was against Tsuruya, where he did get knocked out. He is 30 years old, so in his prime for this flyweight division. He has a small height advantage. Ray, on the other hand, only one of his wins have came from decision. The rest have came from finish. Like I said, a pretty big prospect. He has some solid boxing skills, but I do see that, you know, that defense and the striking isn't all there. He drops his hands sometimes. There is a possibility where, you know, Carlos could catch Ray in this fight, because Carlos does have the better boxing skills. He's been taken down though in his UFC career and hasn't looked the greatest. With Ray, on the other hand, the threat of the takedown mixed with this striking, I think Ray's going to be able to take him down and submit him, because like I said, most of his fights end by finish, and most of those finishes are by submission. So it's either going to be like a submission or a ground and pound KO win. Now the problem is, when is this going to happen? I'm going to say maybe I'm seeing a round 3 submission win for Ray. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, let's keep moving on. Also in the early prelims, heavyweight division, Andrei Arlovski taking on Martin Buday. Arlovski, he's a vet in the UFC, currently on a 3-fight losing streak. His last win was 2 years ago against Jay Collier. You know, Arlovski, he does have some good head movement. I think he's going to be the faster, more athletic guy in there. Martin Buday, on the other hand, 13-2, decent fight record. Last loss was against Shamil. In my opinion, losing to someone like Shamil isn't the worst thing in the world. Buday's going to have that height advantage. He has a really good underrated pressure to his game. And I think, you know, unfortunately, this is going to be a very boring fight. Like I said, Arlovski's going to be the more athletic, the faster guy out there, good head movement. But I think Martin Buday is just going to smother up Andrei Arlovski, get his giant gut on top of him, smother him against the cage, and be a very boring decision win for Martin Buday, unfortunately. And hopefully Arlovski retires after this, because he's too old to be in this game, unfortunately. Again, this will be his 4th loss in a row, but don't get me wrong, there is a pathway for Arlovski to get it done. But I just think Martin Buday is just going to be too smothering out there, holding him against the fence, maybe getting a takedown, holding him on the ground. Some very boring heavyweight action, but let's keep moving on. Women's strawweight division, we have the karate hottie Michelle Waterson-Gomez taking on Gillian Robertson. Now, I say this every single time. I'm pretty sure Waterson was in the video I made about UFC fighters who I want to retire this year, because Waterson is 38 years old. Crazy. I literally forget how old she is every single time she's coming up to fight, and I do some research behind her. But 4-fight losing streak, hasn't won in almost 4 years. Gillian Robertson, on the other hand, she's coming into her prime, 29 years old. She's gonna have the height and reach advantage, and 69% of her wins come from submission alone. Where on the other hand, Michelle Waterson, 50% of her wins come from submission. I do think Michelle Waterson is gonna have the better footwork, might be a little bit faster out there, but I do think Gillian Robertson has a huge advantage when it comes to the ground. Do I think it's gonna be a first round, second round finish for Gillian Robertson? No, I actually see this going into the later half of this third round. I think it's gonna be a very competitive fight up until then too. I think Gillian Robertson is gonna get Michelle Waterson down a good couple of times here going into the third round, but I do see Michelle Waterson just keep getting up and up and up. But I do think that's going to zap her gas tank. Again, 38 years old. She's definitely past her prime. Gillian Robertson, on the other hand, I think she's going to get it done in that early, late half of round 3. She's going to get some sort of submission win, whether it be like an arm triangle, a rear naked choke, an arm bar, one of the two. I think Gillian Robertson is going to get a submission win over a very tired Michelle Waterson in that third round. But yeah, that's all the early prelims. Let's move over to just the normal prelims now. The opener, Payton Talbott taking on Yanis Ghemmouri. Now, Payton Talbott 8-0. He's going to have a pretty big height and reach advantage, and 75% of his wins come from KO alone. Where Yanis, on the other hand, 12-2. He's coming off this weird body kick KO in his last fight. And you know, he has this very awkward fighting stance where he's leaning back, he has that chin wide open, and I think he's just begging to be KO'd by Talbott, to be honest. Payton Talbott, on the other hand, he's a very calm fighter, constantly stalking his prey, constantly just hunting him down. Very rarely is he on that back foot. He's constantly moving forward. He never looks worried out there too. He's always very calm, cool, and collective. Even when he's getting taken down and he has someone on his back, he's always just very calm out there. He's not going crazy. He's pretty much just looking like he's high 24/7 because of how calm he is. And you know, he's always looking for that KO shot. And let's be realistic here, Yanis is here to be knocked out. You know, the UFC know this. The UFC put Yanis in there to get KO'd badly, a highlight reel KO. They're trying to build Payton Talbott. It's very obvious. And yeah, I think, you know, Yanis is going to get in there round 1, chin up in the air, lift his leg up to check Payton's kick. But I could 100% see Payton just faking a low kick just to get Yanis on one foot, leaning back with that chin in the air, just to come in with an overhand or a hook and just knock him out bad. Give me a first round highlight reel KO for Payton Talbott. Possibly one of the KOs of the card, but let's keep moving over to the featherweight division. This prelim card is stacked from the beginning to the end. Honestly, everything from the prelims and up have nothing but great fights. But featherweight division, Charles Jourdain taking on Gene Silva. Silva was supposed to fight a few fights back, but the fight got cancelled. Got booked now for 303. He's 12-2 right now. Charles Jourdain, on the other hand, he's going to have that height advantage. In my opinion, he has a pretty underrated chin. I don't think he's ever been put out in his UFC career so far. And you know, he has a bunch of great tools in his arsenal to fight someone like a Gene Silva. But going back to Silva, 75% of his wins come from KO alone. He is, in my opinion, one of the more entertaining fighters on this roster so far. And this is a huge step up in competition for Gene Silva. This is only his second fight in the UFC. Does that mean he's definitely going to lose? Absolutely not. He has some crazy power where he can definitely get Charles Jourdain out of there. In my opinion, he has a better boxing. Definitely going to test Jourdain's chin in this fight. But like I said, Jourdain, just a more experienced guy out here. I think he has the better tools in his arsenal to fight someone like a Gene Silva. I think this is a good matchup for Charles Jourdain. I think Charles is just gonna like outpoint him all 3 rounds. Spinning kick, kicks to the legs, kicks to the stomach, head kicks. I think he's gonna keep him at distance, win the fight off of points, decision win 29-28, possibly a 30-27, but more likely than not, Gene Silva is gonna win one of these rounds, possibly the first round. knock down Charles Jourdain, but he'll recover. But yeah, there's literally two options for this fight: Charles Jourdain by a decision win or Silva by a KO win. But I'm going with my boy Charles Jourdain. I just think this is a really good matchup for him. But let's keep moving down. Featherweight division, Cub Swanson taking on Andrei Fili. Cub Swanson right now 29-13. Both of these fighters, honestly, Andrei Fili 23-11, but both of these guys are like a win one lose one, win one lose one type of fighter, especially as of recently. Cub Swanson coming off that robbery decision win over Hakeem Dawodu. 60% of Cub Swanson's wins come from finish, while Andrei Fili's 59 of them come from finish. In my opinion, Andrei Fili is just a better striker, a more trickier fighter than Hakeem Dawodu. There were so many moments in that Hakeem Dawodu where Cub Swanson was open for like a straight down the pipe. I think Andrei Fili is going to be able to get it done. Do I see Andrei Fili knocking out Cub Swanson? There's a possibility, but to be honest, I think he could very well just drop him a few times in this fight with that straight down the pipe. But I see it being a decision win. Plus, like I said, they're a win one lose one type of fighter. Andrei Fili last fight was a loss. Cub Swanson last fight was a win. So Cub Swanson, it's already written in stone he's going to lose. Andrei Fili already written in stone he's going to win. Give me Andrei Fili by decision win. Let's keep moving down to the middleweight division. Joe Pyfer taking on Marc-André Barriault. Joe Pyfer, you know, I might not be the biggest fan of this guy. I might hate his personality, hate the way he talks on the mic, just not the biggest fan of his whole demeanor. But at the end of the day, this guy is still a prospect. You know, he still lost his last fight, but he lost against one of the best fighters in this middleweight division. Plus Jack Hermansson, especially in that fight, that was the best Jack Hermansson we've seen in his whole career. So a hard fight for Joe Pyfer, but like I said, he's still a prospect in this middleweight division. That one loss isn't going to completely derail him. Pyfer, small reach advantage and height advantage. Both of these guys are coming off a loss. Marc-André is 34 years old, where Joe Pyfer is 27 years old. Constantly improving Joe Pyfer, where Marc-André Barriault is at the end career of his prime, typically going downhill from now. Joe Pyfer, 92% of his wins come from finish, where Marc-André Barriault, 69% of his wins come from finish. Barriault has this nasty, like really dirty clinch game, just trying to smother you, get a hold of you. It's a pretty exhausting game plan, to be honest. Andrei Barriault does also have a really good chin. I think it's going to get tested a lot in this Joe Pyfer fight, because I think this fight is a pretty, not a huge step down. This is definitely one of the more experienced guy that Joe Pyfer has fought so far in his career, but this is still a step down in competition compared to Jack Hermansson. Joe Pyfer, speed advantage, more explosive. I think he's the stronger guy out of the two as well. And I think Joe Pyfer is going to come into this fight with something to prove, something to show the fans that, you know, just because he lost that fight doesn't mean he's not going to be continuously improving. I think he's going to come into this fight with a bad case of something to prove. I think he's going to violently knock out Marc-André Barriault. Like I said, I don't like Joe Pyfer either. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but you can't deny that this man most likely is either going to outpoint and just batter Marc-André Barriault for 3 rounds, or he's going to connect on that chin and put him out cold. Give me Joe Pyfer by also a pretty memorable highlight reel KO in this very early second round. Let's keep moving down though. This is the main card now. I'm not gonna lie. Welterweight division, Ian Garry versus Michael Venom Page. I haven't fully decided who I'm gonna pick. Logically, you know, Ian Garry should win this fight, but maybe it's because I hate Ian Garry too, and I'm trying not to be a bias, but there's something in my mind. Maybe it's like the MMA gods are trying to tell me something, but I think MVP is going to knock out Ian Garry. But Ian Garry right now 14-0, MVP 22-2, definitely more of a vet in the MMA space, not the UFC, but MMA space in general. He's going to have that reach advantage. He has 76% of his wins come from finish, but he's 37 years old. Ian Garry, on the other hand, 57% of his wins come from finish, and he's only 26 years old. There's going to be 11 years age difference in this fight. I think he's a higher IQ fighter out of the two. Ian Garry is a very high IQ fighter in the cage. He has good output. He lands a lot of shots. There's definitely a way where, you know, Ian Garry can continuously beat up that leg of MVP and land some takedowns and win that way. He could win a decision win. He could knock out MVP possibly, but MVP, you know, he's the older fighter, but I think he's the more explosive fighter. I think he has everything to gain and also at the same time everything to lose in this fight. If he beats someone like an Ian Garry, best believe he's getting a title shot next. If he loses to Ian Garry, he's 37 years old. This might be his do or don't fight. If he doesn't win, who knows if he ever gets that shot at the belt. Age is 100% not on his favor right now, but I think he's going to be the more explosive fighter. I think there's definitely avenues to test Ian Garry's chin. Realistically, Ian Garry's chin hasn't been tested that much in the UFC so far or in his entire career, so I could see MVP hurting Ian Garry and even knocking him out. So give me a round 2 KO win for MVP. The betting sites right now have it practically even. A lot of people are picking Ian Garry, and you know, I'm just seeing Ian Garry getting KO'd, TKO'd. I'm just seeing him getting finished by MVP. This might come back to haunt me. This might be a pretty terrible prediction, but I'm sticking by it. Let's keep moving on. I have no idea why the hell this is on the main card. Women's bantamweight division. Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Macy Chiasson. Now, Bueno Silva 10-3, Macy also 10-3. 70% of Bueno Silva's wins do come from submission. She's 32 years old, so just in her prime right now. She last fought for the belt against Pennington in the beginning of this year. Macy, on the other hand, she's going to have the reach and height advantage. 60% of her wins come from finish, but I think Bueno Silva has a huge grappling advantage in this fight. There were times in that Pennington fight where she did get the back of Pennington. She had some submission threats. I think, Bueno Silva, she has some pretty nasty submission threats, and I see her submitting Macy in the pretty early in this fight. Give me like a first round submission for Mayra Bueno Silva. I think Bueno Silva should be way more of a favorite in this fight, but regardless, who really cares about it? I don't think anyone is really excited for this fight whatsoever, so let's keep moving down to the light heavyweight division. Anthony Smith taking on Roman Dolidze. Now, is it just me, or is it feeling like Anthony Smith has this main character-like energy going with him recently? Anthony Smith definitely going to have the height advantage. 88% of his wins come from finish. Both of these guys are 35 years old. I think Smith has the fight IQ. Roman Dolidze going up in weight for this fight, 12-3. He's on a 2-fight losing streak against Vettori and Imaivov. 83% of his wins come from finish, but he's a pretty bad striker, I'm not gonna lie. He does have good leg kicks and he's a good grappler, but his strike on the feet is pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, Anthony Smith has this like main character like aura going around him right now, and I'm not gonna lie, I think he's one win away from a title shot, especially if he cuts a good promo, and because of that, I think he's going to win this. I think the MMA gods are going to be shining upon him. I think they're going to give him all the energy. Give me Anthony Smith by a 30-27 decision win. Calling out for his title shot next. Let's keep moving on to a banger co-main event. Featherweight division. Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopes. Brian Ortega, 16-3. He's only lost to Max Holloway and Volkanovski, two of the GOATs in that featherweight division. He does have a loss on his record to Yair just because he got injured in that first fight. But he is 33 years old. He's coming to the end of his prime. 69% of his wins do come from finish. Where Diego Lopes, on the other hand, he's going to have that height and reach advantage. He's 24-6 and only 29 years old. He's just getting into his prime, and 92% of his wins, 92% of those 24 wins come from finish. This man has some crazy power. He's going to be the faster fighter, more explosive fighter. And I think all of the wars that Brian Ortega has had in his career, the Max Holloway fight, the Volkanovski fight, I think those are going to start catching up to him. He does have some pretty good cardio, so if it does go to the later end of this fight, I could definitely see Brian Ortega start to pull it off. But Brian Ortega gives me the energy of someone who's not constantly in shape, constantly in camp, constantly improving. Where Diego Lopes, on the other hand, he gives me the vibe of someone who is locked in heavy right now. I think this short notice fight is going to play in Diego Lopez's favor. I think Diego Lopes is knocking out Brian Ortega cold in the first round. I love both of these guys, but Diego Lopes just has everything going for him right now. This is honestly a very good style opponent for someone like a Diego Lopes. So give me Diego Lopes round 1 KO. Let's move over to the light heavyweight Main event, the championship belt on the line, the rematch, Alex Pereira taking on Yuri Procházka, number 2. Now, Alex Pereira has a small height advantage, Yuri Procházka, small reach advantage. Pereira, 36 years old, Procházka, 31 years old. 80% of Alex Pereira's wins come from KO, where 97% of Yuri Procházka's 30 wins come from finish. Alex Pereira's average fight time is 10 minutes and 12 seconds, where Yuri Procházka's is 11 minutes and 27 seconds. And you know, before this card was announced, I predicted that the UFC was going to make this a new main event. I predicted Conor was going to pull out. I predicted they were going to replace it with this card. And you know, after rewatching Yuri's fight at UFC 300, this man is just open on the feet, begging to get that left hook. I can't stop thinking of just how open he was. Plus, I don't think he's going to be able to stop Alex Pereira's leg kicks. I don't think he's going to be able to hold Alex Pereira on the ground for a long period of time. I do think he can get him on the ground, but Alex Pereira has some pretty underrated get-ups from the ground. Right now, Pereira, he's constantly getting better and better and better after every fight. Literally in his last fight at 300, he looked like a god against Jamal. I think Alex has everything going for him. I think everything's on his side to win this. This is definitely Alex's fight to win. Don't get me wrong, Yuri can catch him with some of his weird, unpredictable striking. But at the end of the day, Alex Pereira, and still, give me a first round KO, late first round going. You know, I predicted this fight was going to happen, so I'm going to predict how it's going to end on the exact time. Give me Alex Pereira left hook knockout, clean KO flatline, round number 1, 4 minutes and 27 seconds on the dot. Write it down. I can't wait for this main event. And you know, if I get this shit right, every single one of you guys better come back to this video, tell me that I was right, subscribe with those post notifications on, because that shit would be legendary. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the videos. How do you think I did on these rare predictions? Do you agree with any of these? Are there some that you don't agree with? Are you guys excited for this card? Because honestly, this is, like I said, top 3 pay-per-views of the year so far. And yeah, we are on that goal to get to 500 subscribers. So if you guys haven't yet, leave a like on this video, subscribe with those post notifications on so you never miss any of my newest videos. And yeah, there's really not that much else left to say except for I will see you guys in my next video.